Another major blow to China's Huawei, this time from Google. The Silicon Valley giant is restricting Huawei's access to its operating system, Android. Google says it's complying with the US government, which blacklisted a Chinese firm last week. The ban threatens Huawei's supply chain and could thwart its bid to become the world's biggest smartphone maker. It is currently number 2, ahead of Apple and just behind Samsung. Now, Huawei is hugely dependent on export to other countries. Have a look at this pilot. Only around half of its sales are made in China, according to research firm Canalys. Russia, Mexico, Saudi Arabia and Italy, as you can see there, were its next biggest markets in the first quarter of 2019. So what does this all mean? Samuel Burke is here for more. And Samuel, when I heard the news, the first thought was, what does it actually mean for consumers, more importantly? Because we're not just talking about people who are in the United States who have Huawei, right around the world.
It's an incredible turn for U.S.-China tensions because now you don't need to be in the U.S. or China to be affected. Any country in between, the 2 largest economies in the world, are now affected because anybody with a Huawei device is going to feel the pain here in all likelihood because this device is really going to be a brick, according to some analysts. Let me just put up on the screen exactly what I'm talking about here because it uses the Android operating system. Of course, the vast majority of phones are Android. So, number 1, Huawei users may not be able to upgrade to the latest version of Android. You're stuck in the past. Number 2, cut off from apps and services like Google Maps, Gmail, and YouTube. Imagine any millennial wanting a phone without YouTube.
I don't know what my son will do without my YouTube.
And number 3, frozen out from apps like ride-hailing services and food delivery apps because they use Google Maps. So if that service is cut off, even if you have a Huawei phone that is functional, you can plug it in, you can talk on it. If you can't find out where your Uber driver is or where the Uber Eats guy is, why do you want to use a phone like that? These are all potential problems for any Huawei user.
OK, what does it mean for Huawei? Because as you clearly just pointed out, it sounds very damaging indeed. What does this do to Huawei's business structure, business model?
This is a huge blow for Huawei. Almost half of the company's income comes from these types of consumer devices, and this may be just the tip of the iceberg. We don't know what Microsoft is going to do. Maybe they won't be able to use Windows on their laptops. Think about their watches that use Android operating system. So all of this may be rendered useless. Yes, in China, people don't use these apps, so maybe they'll use their own operating system in different services. But outside of China, all of these apps, this is an entire ecosystem that basically mobile internet is built around.
Can something good come out of this? Because didn't Huawei say for some time that it was working on its own operating system? So perhaps this is the time to do it?
OK, so they could be more self-reliant, as they're likely going to become on chips. It could make the company stronger in the long term. And they could build their own services, which could be successful. But keep in mind, lots of other companies like Microsoft and BlackBerry have tried and failed. Anytime you see a BlackBerry device, Isa, that's somebody using Android because they weren't able to build their own app store to become successful enough that the world wanted it.
I want to get your opinion on this because I was looking at a pretty damning survey on European firms and technology transfers in China. If I bring this up for viewers, they can see the EU Chamber of Commerce in China says 20% of companies felt compelled to hand over technology in exchange for access to the Chinese market. That is up from 10% 2 years ago or so. Yeah.
Amazing, except I'm not surprised at all because I talk to the CEOs all the time of American, UK tech firms that are trying to do business in China, and this is what they tell me all the time. I mean, think about it, how crazy it is that Huawei is so desperate to get into the United States, but basically you have so many American companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google, which can't even get into China, and companies like Apple have had to comply with these types of rules, like making sure that all data of Chinese clients is stored in China, and that's where people get worried about having to have their systems, their technology, their patents there, and what it means if the Chinese government wants access to it.
Very quickly, it's not a kill switch for Huawei in any sense.
It's not a kill switch because the Chinese are very good at thinking long term. That's classic China with the tech companies that I cover. So without a doubt, they've already been planning for this day. But if they can be successful, well, that's a very big hurdle to overcome outside of China without Android.
Samuel Burke, I have no doubt we'll be talking about this throughout the week. Thank you very much.